Okay, so welcome those who've managed to attend. Let me just let you know that this is just a single slideshow. We're not going to be mucking about turning screens off and on. And relevant folks will be asked to speak to their slides. Keep your microphones on mute and put your hand up if you want to speak. But sometimes I don't notice hands going up, so do shout out if needs be. As you can tell, the webinar is being recorded, and I will make the point that these are just summary slides, they're highlights. The annual report version will be much more detailed. And the annual meeting will be a completely different beast to previous years, because in previous years it was essentially a repeat of what was said in the webinar. This year is going to be much more looking at history and trying to join up the different, what I call silos that exist in Southwest marine ecosystems. The sources of images are usually acknowledged. If there's no indication of who took an image, then it's mine. We're very, very careful about getting permission for images, and so we do acknowledge, but also make sure that we've got people's permission to use images. So that said, I'll get on with it and hope that other people join us. So here you are, you can read that. My role is to introduce information which has been harvested through 2025. Paul Naylor keeps a running monthly list of stuff which we've found in publications on the internet and so on. But your role is to comment if you agree and to add information. And it might be that you've got other species which are new to the Southwest, range extensions, changes in the abundance of species and habitats, etc. So that's your role. My role is to start a discussion about the why and the how of change and about any peculiar behaviors of species. And there's another role for you, and that's to contact me before the end of April with any further thoughts. So this is my take after more than 50 years of making observations and so on, is that basically we're detectives. We're spotting things, we're finding clues, we're trying to make links. We're trying to link the clues together to find out why changes are happening and what's driving those changes. But this is the actual running order for the slides. We'll do a new Kids on the Block one, because it seems every year there are species which are new to Britain or new to the Southwest, which we like to draw attention to. Sometimes there are even species new to science, which crop up during a particular year. Tracking change, we look at range changes, which may be decreased range or increased range, and decreased or increased abundance. Behaviors and events which we'd like to explain. So these are sort of strange things which happen and which very often make the press. Very often something happens, like there's a washout of species, and you want to be able to say, oh yes, that happened because, and that happened 4 years ago and 8 years ago. Non-native species, we always keep track of the status of non-native species in the Southwest, non-native marine species. New structures, this year it seems to have died back a bit, the new structures which are being built and established, but they're supposed to enhance biodiversity. And so my key question during that slide will be, do they? And I've got a category here of eye-catching events, trends and images for publicity, because we rely enormously on getting the public on side, particularly when it comes to conservation, and helping the public to better enjoy marine life. And those are the sorts of eye-catching events which people in your communications departments are keen to know about. But there's also getting better at observations, because I'm always very jealous when I see the histograms and the graphs from, people like people studying seals and cetacean strandings and so on, that they got such a good way of illustrating the changes which are occurring. And very often when it comes to seesaw and seabed, we haven't got those sorts of graphable observations. So can we get better? And then everything we do, we hope, informs environmental protection and management. So, Charlotte, I can't see you on the screen. Are you there? No, I'm looking for Charlotte Cumming, because Charlotte was going to speak to this slide. It's her topic. Perhaps she's tripped over doing up her new house or something. So that's a pity. We can go back to it if she pops up. But this is the new kid on the block in 2025, which was very conspicuous when it was found. The hair curler sea slug. It comes under eye-catching events and images as well, because the press were very, very keen to look at that. In theory, I've got 53 participants, but I don't see them all. So I don't know. I'll say again, Charlotte, are you out there? No. Okay, so
hi Keith, I am here. Sorry.
Oh, you are here.
Yes, I am here. I was getting Zoom updated. I don't do this very often, and Zoom, of course, then decided when I logged in 10 minutes ago it had to go and update itself. So
we all have the same problems, Charlotte.
I am now updated and here.
And you can see your slide, can you?
I can see my slide. Yes, I didn't know. Well, it didn't say it was number
I'd
one.
hardly started. So would you like to say something about the hair curler sea slug?
Sorry, yes. I'm not seeing any slides. All I'm seeing are speakers.
Is anyone else having the same problem? They can't see my screen.
I can see you, but not your screen.
So just on that, Keith, what people need to do at the top of the screen, there you can click on a box that says meeting, or you can click on one that says KHIS screen. You need to click on that one, Keith Hiscock screen, and then you will see the slides.
Is that okay, Doug?
Got it now, thank you.
You got it now, there we are. Thank you very much indeed, Bryce, thank you.
Worries.
Right, okay. Sorry, apologies everybody. Hello, here I am. The hair curler sea slug. First, you're going to see from the words on there, but I'll expand a little. We were doing a shore search walkover, having done the shore search week quadrat transect survey down at Prisk Cove at the mouth of the Helford in September. And as with all of these things, the tide was turning. I do these things in waders because I quite like to get in and get up close and personal. And saw a tiny sea slug, as you can see from the image of the spirilla. I think that's a Rissoa parva on the bit of seaweed next to it. It was this minute little thing. I thought, oh, it's a sea slug. I'll take some pictures. Couldn't really see what it was. Got it back on the computer, looked at it and thought, I've never seen anything like that, and stuck it over to Bernard Picton, who came back pretty promptly, went, ooh, the last record of one of those was in Brest in northern France. Not had those in the UK before. Lots of general excitement in the Cornwall Wildlife Trust, who put out a press release that ended up in, they did local news and the BBC News down in the southwest, but actually also got picked up. There was a full page picture of it in the New Scientist, and where else did various other bits and pieces of media. Having had the media coverage, I had a message from someone via Matt Slater in the Wildlife Trust who said, I think I saw one of those back in May. We actually ended up with 2 reports from May, nothing through the summer at all. And then from September onwards, we've had at least 30 records, ranging in the west from the record at Prisk. I think there was one at Durgan, which is also on the Helford, right up to a real outlier up in Plymouth with Jennycliff Bay. Everything else has been around that Falmouth Bay, so Gilly Beach, Castle Beach, all in Falmouth. And then completely randomly in November, 3 in Polzeth in North Cornwall. They haven't been seen since then, but that's Sarah's image that you've got up there. There was spawn with those ones. There was spawn in the May ones. Katie's photo is her one in May on Castle Beach. My one, as I said, was a minute one, and they tend to sort of start off purpley and end up brown. Would be an observation rather than a scientific explanation, but they tend not to be purpley when they're bigger, or I haven't seen any particularly purple ones once they've got bigger. But yeah, that was
well
the
done,
excitement.
Charlotte. Yeah, no, it is exciting, and nudibranchs turn up every year with something unusual or different. And I think even the Victorian naturalists who were very much into nudibranchs realised that they tended to disappear for years on end and then come back up again. But, you know, obviously we have got ones which are warmer water species which are coming into our waters. And Charlotte, I think this is a warmer water species one, isn't it?
Yes, I think I mean, some of the press got very excited saying we had a Caribbean nudibranch. You do get them on the other side of the Atlantic. You get them over there in the Caribbean. They've then sort of come across to the sort of Mediterranean and then up the Portuguese coast and then round the corner. As I said, Brest, France, northern France was, other than the records we didn't then know about, the May ones. The previous record to mine in September had been over in Brest in Brittany. So
right, well, good. Keep on looking, everyone,
I'll
particularly
keep
at sea
looking.
slugs. And now we're going to go on to the rock pool project. Zach, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Zach, if you want to talk to these 2 slides, just ask me to move on to the next one, which I'll just show you which one it is. It's that one.
Yep.
Okay.
So we, the Rock Pool Project, have been celebrating a year of the Big Rock Pool Challenge, which is an event where we take people down every month to go and do some rock pooling and record all the finds on INAT. And because of that, we've been looking at a lot of the iNaturalist data. And these 2 slides are kind of showing some of the notable changes that we've had from the data that we've seen over the last year. And this is from all iNaturalist records. This one in particular is species of note, such as the hair curlers, rainbow sea slugs and stuff like that. And we can see kind of like where they've been popping up and where we've been getting records of them. Our next slide has actually got a series of things that we've noticed in terms of change from numbers of records compared to previous years, with some big notable ones being stuff like green shore crabs and the Montague's crabs as well as some of the jellyfish as well have been noticed less of them. We have got a full report if any of you wants to read it, and I'll drop that in the chat in a minute. But these just nice little graphics kind of show some of the main things that we've noticed.
No, I think this diagram demonstrates how even the normal run-of-the-mill intertidal species can help to tell a story of change, apart from the fact that it doesn't matter how common they are, the public find them fascinating. Is that right, Zach?
Yes, yeah. So obviously one of the things with the Big Rock Pool Challenge is because we're actively encouraging people to record stuff, a lot of stuff that has been recorded might have changed, which might have be why we're seeing skews and certain things being reported or not. But overall, we're seeing a few drastic changes here and there.
And you are using iNaturalist, which means that if you're on a seashore which actually has a signal, then it can go straight into a specific part of iNaturalist. Is that right?
Yeah. So if anytime you make a record, it's pulled through to iNat, and then we can pull through anything that is from the UK, which is what we've done for this. So we've just looked over the last year for a number of records.
Okay, I think I need to move on to the next one, which is Marklim. I don't think anyone's here from Marklim, either Nova or Steve Hawkins, but they've given me their information for 2025. And there is information which relates particularly to signs of heat damage in 2025, because during the spring and summer, it was very hot and it was very sunny, and quite a few seaweeds on the open shore showed signs of heat damage. That there'll be a picture later. And then there are sort of perhaps climate change overall effects. Laminaria digitata, which is the lower shore kelp species. The zone seems to be getting narrower, declined over the last few years. And in many places, Saccharisa polyschides, which is a pseudo-annual, in other words, it can live for one year, but generally it's just a year, is replacing it. So a bit of a switch around with laminaria or kelps, and I will go back to that with another one later. Honeycomb worm, Sabellaria ovulata. Very pretty, very curious. In my view, it's a species which tends to smother the rocks and reduce biodiversity, but perhaps people in the nature conservation agencies who've got to apply the Habitats Directive, which include reefs as a habitat considered to be threatened, might have a different view. But Sabellaria ovulata continues to be found further east and be increasing in abundance. Now, Steve Hawkins doesn't like the name St. Piran's crab because it doesn't just occur in Cornwall. So that's why I haven't used St. Piran's crab on this slide. But Clibonarius erythropus is St. Piran's crab. And they were found at their eastern known limit on the north coast, with Prawl still being the eastern limit in the Channel coast, and only a few individuals found there. So it's still something which is found very frequently, and I'll come back to it specifically in a slide towards the end. And the cold water barnacle Semi-Balanus balanoides, recruitment continues to be very low in the southwest. The warmer water species, Perforatus perforatus, which I call the volcano barnacle, continues to be recruiting well. So perhaps you can tease out some species which are responding to warming seas and air temperatures there. So that's a little report from Marklim. Tracking change. Sometimes species pop up which you'd like to sort of see, are they still there? Are they still there? Are they increasing? Are they becoming more abundant or less abundant? Marklim does that to some extent. And there's Sabellaria ovulata, the honeycomb worm at Goodrington in Tor Bay on the top left. But it's also present in, for instance, an increasing at Westward Ho and at Osmington in Weymouth Bay. So it's going further east and it's increasing in abundance and cover. So look out for that and make your own mind up about whether it's a smothering species and what I might sometimes call a rubbish species, or whether it's worthy of its status as being a reef species deserving protection. They make a lovely scrunching noise when you kick them, but I shouldn't say that. And the rainbow sea slug, first reported in southwest waters from the Isles of Scilly and Falmouth in 2022, continued occasional records, and that comes under eye-catching events and images, because look at it, that's going to get in all the newspapers, all the television coverage, and so on. And I shouldn't talk about 2026, but there's been a recent photograph from the Falmouth area of just a cluster of them, significant numbers. They are tiny. That one which I photographed at Hannaford there was only a matter of about 1 centimetre long. And the depilatory sea hare, presume it's depilatory because it's very smooth and hairless, infrequently seen in southern Britain, but many records in 2025. So again, that's an eye-catching image which did make the newspapers. Here it is at the Mewstone. There are 2 of them. I know it's difficult to see there are 2 of them. One's a slightly lighter brown than the other one, and there's an egg string being laid there. So look out for Aplysia depilans this coming summer. It is a warmer water species, so is it going to stay around? And then, Matt, are you out there? Do you want to speak to this slide? No answer came to
Yeah.
reply.
Hi,
Yep, there we
hi,
are.
Keith. Sorry about that. Yes, so this was last year was an interesting year for slipper lobsters. So they're a species that are found occasionally around the southwest. We had a lot of them brought into the aquarium at Newquay in the early 2000s. When I said, well, a few a year. So not a lot, a few a year. But yeah, this last year we had quite a few spotted by sea search divers, and then on a dive in Mounts Bay on the edge of a reef, me and my buddy came across 11, which was, I think, pretty unexpected. They're all clustered, as you can see in that picture, underneath a big sort of overhanging lump of rock. And as far as I know, that's the largest sort of aggregation of them that's been observed in our waters. So yeah, pretty good year for that species.
Yeah, and Olivia Langmead reports seeing slipper lobsters behind a crowd of spiny lobsters. Now, we'll come back
Yeah.
to the aggregations of spiny lobsters in another slide in a minute. But
I've actually got a bycatch image of one right behind a spiny lobster as well in a crevice that was taken the year before. So, they seem to be quite happy living in close proximity, don't they?
yeah, yeah. So there's something for you divers to keep an eye open for this year. I've yet to see someone in British waters, see any in British waters. So I keep on looking under dark overhangs and places like that. And one day, perhaps this year, I might get lucky. Okay, let's move on. Right, you're on, Holly.
Thank you, Keith. Hi everyone that I don't know. My name's Holly. By day I work at JMCC, and this is a little side passion project that me and some fellow students from Plymouth University put together. So I thought I'd give a little bit of context first before I dive into the 2025 update. So CCI was created in 2020 by 5 marine conservation master students from the University of Plymouth as part of a module assignment. Since then, we've registered as a UK charity, which is dedicated to the conservation of cuttlefish. So our main aim has been to address knowledge gaps and data gaps through research that can hopefully support fisheries management, whilst also trying to raise awareness of these fascinating animals through other outreach and engagement events. However, earlier this year, we did make the difficult decision to start the process of closing the charity, mainly due to increasing demands and resource constraints. So we're here to hopefully try and work out how we can feed in some of the work that we've established and developed and kind of hopefully find a bit of a CCI legacy. So one of the main key outputs from CCI is Project Sepia. So this is our citizen science monitoring project, which is investigating the behaviour and distribution of common cuttlefish in the UK. So this has been running since 2022, and members of the public can submit sightings of cuttlefish or cuttlefish eggs using a nice and easy Google form, which will include information such as depth, the substrate type, and any notable behaviours that they also saw. And data entries can then be verified with any associated images that they took and used to create map outputs. So the map on the screen, sorry, it's quite small. This is actually 2024 data. Apologies, didn't have time to make the 2025 map, but you can see the kind of things that we can get from this project. So we've previously utilised this data set to identify spatial and temporal distribution patterns. So we'd be happy to share this data set with anyone who might find it useful for their research or whatever you're involved in that's relevant. So moving on to the 2025 updates. So firstly, from the data that we have got from Project Sepia last year, this indicates a potential decrease in reported sightings of both cuttlefish and cuttlefish eggs. However, it's important to note and caveat that this doesn't necessarily indicate a true population decline. It might instead reflect potential reduced promotion of the project over the last year, which might have resulted in fewer public submissions. So just important to caveat that. Secondly, in terms of the fisheries management, a cuttlefish fisheries action plan has recently been published. So this included several measures designed to improve knowledge and management of the fisheries, including the development of species identification cards for the 3 different species we get in the UK, the introduction of market sampling, and also a voluntary code of practice for managing cuttlefish eggs found on pots and traps. So progress on these actions are currently being reviewed every 6 months. And finally, so point 3 on the update section, a market sampling program carried out between 2024 and 2025 collected biological data from landings at key fish markets. This work will hopefully help to improve our understanding of which cuttlefish species are being landed, as well as the size structure of catches, which will hopefully ultimately support future monitoring and fisheries management. So finally, just to finish, just trying to keep things nice and succinct. Firstly, I've got a few key asks potentially from CCI just to try and help with our legacy where possible. So firstly, we are looking for an individual or organisation who might be interested in taking on Project Sepia to ensure that this kind of hopefully valuable citizen science data set looking at cuttlefish in the UK can continue to grow and inform future conservation efforts. Secondly, to maximise opportunities for data and expertise transition, we are looking to also attend an outreach event in the Southwest, potentially during the spring or summer months this year. So if anyone knows of any good outreach events that might be suitable, we'd be very grateful to hear from you. We also have a number of research reports and resources that we'd also be happy to share with anyone that is interested. And finally, although we understand that progress is being made and in understanding and managing cuttlefish fisheries, we hope that these animals can continue to be advocated for following the closure of CCI. So advocate where you can, and thank you for listening. Yeah, please do get in contact. Our contact information is in the bottom right corner of the slide. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Holly. Holly's looking for help and presumably further information. Has anyone got anything to add to what Holly said or ask Holly?
And feel free to put it in the chat. I think we've got another member of CCI here as well. So
yeah, no, I'm not seeing chat at the moment, so I'm I'm not going to try and test my skills at moving around this screen because I'll just mess it up.
Yes, don't risk it.
You've got details of how to contact Holly and her colleagues there. Take a photograph of the screen if you can't wait for the recording to come through, but it'll all come through on recording. And Holly, it used to be the case, let's say up until 15 years ago, that the sort of Bristol Underwater Photographic Group would basically be emailing each other saying at the end of April or thereabouts, the cuttlefish are in. And they meant that the Babacoom, the cuttlefish are in. And someone somewhere might have dates when that call was made. Does anything like that still happen?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I am actually based in Bristol right now, so I'm in a good place to find out. But yeah, something like that would be good to try and even backdate the information that we do have, try and collate it all together. It's a good idea.
Well, I can tell you relevant people, and I'll be down at Babacoom at the end of April, either looking for cuttlefish, but they might have moved to different locations, and of course looking for octopus as well.
Yes.
So, yep. So thank you very much indeed for that. So, this is the big one, isn't it? Range extensions and increased abundance, common octopus. You've probably seen all of the press material, all of the enormous tonnage of octopus which have been landed along the English Channel coast. There are articles, there's a very good report. You can see 2 references at the bottom of the page there. Again, if you've got a camera, then you can take a photograph of the screen, but you can also wait until the recording comes out. They came, they saw, they conquered from about April onwards. So the largest numbers and greatest impact on crustacean fisheries and on commercial and non-commercial mollusks since 1900 and 1950. So there were very large outbursts in 1900 and 1950. You're beginning to say there's a 50-year gap. That gap might get much less now because it was put down to mild winters. And if the octopus survive because of mild winters, looks like we're going to get more mild winters. Now, they came in from the east, particularly the Channel Isles. They populated the English Channel coast and offshore. Very few in the Isles of Scilly, and one reported off North Devon in 2025. Bryce Stewart is on this webinar, and you might want to say something in a minute, Bryce, when I've done slide 2. And then I wrote an article in British Wildlife. And of course, the considerable press coverage brought in fishermen a lot. And there's been terrific help from the fishing industry in terms of getting the science worked out in that report on the blooms of octopus, history, trends, causes, and consequences. So I'll just move on to the next slide, and then Bryce can come in and add anything that he might like to. So let me have your significant observations. Now, what's happening here is that this is a photograph I took at Babacombe at the end of May in 2025. Look at the barricade. There's an octopus in here. The only way I could see the octopus was to shine my torch through that letterbox-sized hole, and I could see just some tentacles like that. That's all I could see. Now, the octopus has barricaded itself into an underboulder situation, but not all dens look like that. Sometimes they're in small caves, sometimes they're just under overhangs without the barricade, and so on. Those of you who are looking, look out for shell middens. If you see a pile of bivalve shells like this, these are mostly otter shells, have a look behind them, because that's the basically the remains of an octopus feast, and behind it in the cave or whatever might well be the octopus that's just now having a quiet time digesting its meal. So these middens, and what are the mollusk species which are being eaten? We have got a list, about half a dozen species which have been identified from the shells. Just curiosity to some extent, but it's also a clue if you're out diving and you see a midden like that, do look behind it, because I didn't work that out for quite a while this summer. And then super pictures from Sophie Shields at Porthkerris, where the octopus really were abundant. I mean, up to 16 seen in a dive. Hidden away in small caves and so on. So you can see the octopus female's eye, you can see the early stage eggs, and she's keeping them clean, and she's ventilating them for probably up to 3 months. And when they've all hatched, because there'll be several batches of eggs, when they've all hatched, she can die. She's done her stuff. A little thing from me, it's just a sort of curiosity idea that I've got, that octopus and what are called combers or comas might get together. It might be the coma is more likely just picking up scraps from the octopus rather than acting as a sort of a hunting pair or anything like that. But I'd be fascinated if you see anything like that, and particularly if you can get photographs. And this year and late last year, already beginning to see youngsters, including in rock pools, including ones that have actually been eaten by small sharks and so on. And somebody's opened up the small shark and found the octopus in its digestive system. So those are the sorts of observations we're looking for, because, Bryce, do you think it's going to happen again?
That's the $64,000 question. I mean, yes, so just to sort of add, so thanks, Keith, you've said a lot, and I won't say much more. not only do we not have the cold winters now, which seem to have knocked off octopus blooms in the past, when we looked at the environmental conditions around this bloom and the year previously, and then we did the same thing for all the previous blooms. So there's one 1950, 1899 and 1900, and there was a smaller one, it seems, 1932, 33 as well. All of those years, it was abnormally warm in the atmosphere and the ocean, both the year before and the year of the bloom. So, I mean, this is not surprising, right? It's a Mediterranean sort of species, so it's going to do better in the warmer conditions. I think the big thing now is that they're here in large numbers. They're still here. We're still hearing lots being caught by the fishermen. There was, as many of you know, lots of breeding last year, and that had almost never been seen before. I mean, partly that's because in 1950 there weren't a lot of scuba divers, but even still, a lot of reports we got were, fishermen talking about eggs on their pots and things like that. So it does, yeah. What I would imagine is probably this year there'll be less because they have been fished very heavily. But all it takes is for the right mix of conditions to sort of proliferate again, and the numbers will take off again because they breed so productively. They grow very, very fast. In the past, it seems like mostly those blooms were based on juveniles being brought in from the Channel Islands and France, whereas now they're here and they're breeding. So I get the feeling they're here to stay. But we're not going to have huge numbers every year, but I get the feeling, and this is an educated sort of guess, that they will persist. The only other thing to say is we, as part of this project, which is still going on, it's got another month or so to run. We did a survey of scuba divers, which may well include some of you. So we had 120 responses to that. So thank you very much if one of those was you. We are writing that up at the moment, so that that report, which includes various other things, should be available by the end of April, hopefully, or thereabouts. So yeah, thanks. Those observations from both divers and from fishermen have really been actually the sort of foundation of this work.
Thank you, Bryce. Interesting topic. I look forward to getting some more photographs this summer, and perhaps now I know where to look a bit better. Okay, we'll move on. And usually in the annual report, I go through each particular group. So seaweeds, coelenterate, sea anemones and corals, worms, mollusks, and so on. But unless there's anything to say, I'm not putting it into this presentation. But as far as seaweeds are concerned, we've heard something from the Marklin people already about intertidal seaweeds, and changes are occurring with some declines in cold water species. I mean, think, for instance, of Dabbalox Alaria esculenta, which used to occur on the Plymouth Sound breakwater. It hasn't been there for decades, but it still occurs out at the Eddystone. And if I can get out to the Eddystone this year, which of course I hope I will, we'll see whether it's still there. But there might be increases in warm water species and sometimes in odd ways. So what I'm looking at the screen here is I'm looking at golden kelp, Laminaria oculuca, but usually you expect to find that in sheltered locations. I know on places in Cornwall it can occur on much more open coast locations, but I was very surprised to find it and photograph it, the photograph here, at a site called the Alternative Ruts. And it was at a depth of 14 meters below chart datum. You see the ruts rise to just 13 meters below chart datum, and coming up the cliff face, as it were, at the top, that's what I saw. And I thought, well, that's very strange, because last week, literally, I was diving the east ruts just here to the east, sorry, to the west, and I deliberately made a comment that not seen, not recorded rather. I wrote in my diving logbook, not recorded. So here we are off Bulktail, Bigbury Bay, well offshore. very strange to see them popping up here. So look out for golden kelp, very easy to tell it, very smooth, stipes, very efficient at defending against attached species. And yes, it is golden. And it was first recorded in Britain in Plymouth Sound in 1948. And Dan Smale and his colleagues are looking specifically at kelp and changes in the abundance of kelp, and looking particularly at Wembury. They record in a paper here, which again, you could use your phone to photograph that or wait until the recording of this comes out. There's a paper which describes how the Laminaria hyperborea, the colder water species in southwest England, actually at Wembury, declined, which aligns with a concurrent increase in sea temperatures above the optimum for the performance of this species. So yeah, it's happening. There are changes taking place because of warming seas, but nothing which the press might find very exciting. I wanted to mention places because there are places where there are pretty detailed historical records. I think way back to the middle of the 19th century when Philip Henry Goss was exploring shores in the region of Tor Bay. And although he was a bit selective about what he noted, those records are in his books. And he's pretty precise about exactly where he went. So you can go back there. But the saltstone in Kingsbridge Estuary is actually somewhere which was very popular with the Marine Biological Association Easter field courses and with sampling in general. So there are a lot of records from the saltstone in Kingsbridge Estuary. That's my panoramic picture from the top of the saltstone. And just a few species pictures I took when I went out just once with Sarah Jackson, of the variety of different habitats there and the sorts of species you're likely to get. But Sarah did a really good job of finding literature from university field courses, Marine Biological Association, the Plymouth Marine Fauna, etc., and did a comparative study of surveys from 1900 to 2025. And the answer? Little change in species diversity. So it's still a very biodiverse site, but there were changes in characterizing species. So that happened as well at Lundy when we resurveyed rocky shores there from the work done by Leslie Harvey in the late 1940s. And the answer was the same, little change in species diversity, but changes in characterizing species. So if you've got old literature, it's well worthwhile having dedicated surveys to go back and see whether they've changed very much to try and account for it and see whether you get the same story as Sarah. Now, I'm not sure. Nigel, has Sarah published or is her thesis available?
Yes, I've got permission to send you a copy if you like, but I would need to check if it was going to go sort of public, if you know what I mean.
No, okay. I could contact Sarah directly, but I might not have her up-to-date email address. But there, so yes, very worthwhile study, and it sort of tells the story of all is not doom and disaster, but there are changes. And then I mentioned behaviors and events to explain. So we're getting towards the end of the presentations now, but I've got to give a talk at the Porcupine Marine Naturalist Society annual meeting in Pembrokeshire in about 2 weeks' time. And I'm going to talk about the way in which Southwest marine ecosystems actually inform the detective story. I started off this slideshow with talking about you are all detectives, and I'll try and actually put that into a more ordered form to say why you need to join up the different silos, I call them, the meteorology, the plankton biology, the oceanography, the abundance of certain charismatic species such as dolphins and so on, and also what on earth are the sea slugs up to? Have they always done what they're doing now? And then try and work out why those events occur. And I say that sometimes, a particular species will do particularly well because of good reproduction, including larval survival. So there's been plenty of food about, they've gobbled up lots of food, and when you gobble up lots of food, then you convert that into eggs and larvae. There might be reduced predation. We haven't got any spectacular examples from Britain, but if you look abroad, if you look to places like California and you look to places like New Zealand, there are lots of demonstrations of how top predators, which perhaps are reduced by fishing activities, keep the populations of sea urchins, which graze the seabed and impoverish the range of species on the seabed. They keep that down, they keep the abundance down. And if you stop the fishing pressure and the top predators regain their dominance, then all of a sudden you've got fantastic growth of algae, including kelps, and much higher biodiversity. I haven't got any examples of that from Southwest England. Let me know if you can think of any. And then if there are favorable currents for dispersal of larvae, some species like warmer conditions, some species like colder conditions, and food availability. There are good years when there's lots of food about and certain species can thrive, and that includes food in the plankton. Think, for instance, not seashore and seabed, but think, for instance, basking sharks. Always being asked, where are the basking sharks gone? We used to be able to see them every summer. Can't see them now, they're gone, they've gone. Why? Well, if you look at the plankton, you find that the calanoid copepods, the little flea-like crustaceans which live in the plankton, the population of the species which the basking sharks favor has basically collapsed over the last 10 or 15 years. So no wonder they've gone somewhere else. And then, of course, there are negative influences, and disease might be a very important one here, which is difficult to consider. But we have had examples of disease, for instance, in pink sea fans. So if you've got any examples, do let me know, because I'm going to raise that issue in the Southwest Marine Ecosystems annual conference. I have one slide, and I'm charged with addressing the subject of disease in marine species, as well as slides for other things. Chemical pollution, that's a negative. Antifoulants, road runoff, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, that's what comes off your tires when you're driving along the road, then they get washed down the drains. Pharmaceuticals, they go down in the sewage. Recreational drugs, they go down in the sewage. So that's chemical pollution, which I think might be much more serious than we actually imagine. Poor reproduction, for whatever reason, could be lack of food, whatever. Storms can damage populations, completely churn up some populations of reef-forming species and so on. Predators may become more abundant. And then collateral damage. That's a very kind term. It refers to impacts from human activities. So obviously dredging, trawling, those are what you might cause collateral damage, where the seabed marine life is also disturbed. Now, those are a few thoughts of mine. It's not comprehensive, but either now or when you've looked at the recording, is there anything that you can think of which I've missed off there from positive, in other words, increasing possibility of something thriving, or negative, in other words, reducing the possibility of something thriving? Anyone want to speak up?
Keith, I think a big one would be invasive species. We're now seeing clumping of Pacific oysters on mudflats displacing the dwarf seagrass. And we've got bladderwrack now using the oysters as a substrate. I also wonder about the pulses of fresh water that we get within estuaries after high rainfalls. example, in Salcombe, the fishers have moved where they used to store the crabs further down the estuary because the crabs all got killed one year with a pulse of fresh water.
How could I forget non-native species?
I wondered that.
Anyone else got anything?
I was just wondering, are we putting fishing under collateral damage? Because that's a big one, surely.
Yeah, sorry, I said I was kind in using the term collateral damage. Perhaps I should put in brackets fishing. Yeah, okay. Sorry, were you trying to say something, Holly? Sorry, can I go to Holly first? Were you trying to say something?
No, it wasn't me. Someone else
okay.
had their hand
David
up.
then. David Francis, yeah.
Keith, I also think about the silt in the freshwater runoff. That seems to be having a significant effect to the tunicates and sponges in the Plymouth Sound.
Yes, I have yet to get out there on the seabed and see for myself. This wretched bad weather is preventing that at the very time when, you know, the silt will be settling out and perhaps causing smothering and clogging feeding organs and so on.
Lots of that going on, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but where's your information coming from?
I've got there's 2 artificial reefs, one in the Queen Anne Battery Marina and one in the Mayflower Marina, and they both seem to have been badly affected. They're super abundant with tunicates all through the summer, and I looked at them last week, and they've nearly all been smothered. So not looking good at all.
No, that's very interesting. Those artificial substrates, the hives, come up in a minute. Anything else, just let me know. My email pops up frequently.
Keith?
Yeah, who's that?
Can I interject? It's John. Isopods on wrasse and pollock, are they increasing in number?
Oh, yes, okay. Well, yes, this is basically the ones which hang on to the head of the wrasse or the pollock and just basically parasitize them. Well, I don't think they kill them, but it's worth perhaps asking the people at CFAS whether there's any evidence that they might cause a reduction in the population. Paul Naylor keeps his eye on these things, so we ought to ask Paul as well. I'll go on to this now. We're not far off the end. Continued increase in abundance of spiny lobsters. This is the sort of thing divers have been seeing in 2025. Not just rows of spiny lobsters lined up against rock shelves, but actually aggregations like this. Now, I'll give you my explanation in a minute, see what you think. But those antennae have got backward pointing sharp spines. And if you get close to a spiny lobster, it starts whipping and slashing. So it's using those antennae for defense. And I just wonder, with the octopus bloom, is this what the spiny lobsters are doing? They're behaving like some medieval soldiers with their pikes and their staffs and so on. And they're basically backing themselves against a wall, and they're defending themselves against their enemies. Anyone like to comment on that? Do you think I got it right? We'll leave it hanging.
Maybe, Keith. Word on the ground from the fishermen is that spiny lobsters haven't been as affected by the octopus as other things. So yeah, maybe you're onto something.
But I think that if the spiny lobsters are in a lobster pot and the octopus goes into the lobster pot, the octopus can catch them from behind.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what it cannot do here, where they got their backs against the wall.
Mm.
So yeah, lots of pictures of spiny lobster shells in lobster pots. And then behaviors and events to explain. Here we are on ex-HMS Scylla. They settled on ex-HMS Scylla in Whitsand Bay in late summer, and I've noted previous mussel settlements on Scylla in 2004, 2008, 2012, 2020. I might have missed some, but it does seem as if, well, I think divers and people know that there are sporadic recruitments in mussels. And 2025 was obviously a good year. Interestingly, small common starfish were also noted in that settlement on the Scylla, but they've been absent or in very low numbers for several years along the English Channel coast. And here we are at the Eddystone Reef, where again, just on the 12th of October, just 2 days after this photograph was taken on XHMS Scylla, where again, I'm seeing small common starfish where I would not have seen any during the main part of the summer. That mass settlement of mussels also happened along the south coast at places like Teignmouth. That's all of this sort of brown area are tiny mussels. And you can see that it's at Teignmouth. Mike, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, hi Keith. Yeah, I know this area very well, and I've never seen anything as large as what I saw in August. And also, local people said it was quite exceptional as well. I have just looked briefly actually over there, and I can't see any of the many mussels at all. And actually, interestingly, just a few days ago, I did a walk around the Salty with a guy, Stuart, from the local Friends of the River Teen Group. And Stuart lives there and he knows the place incredibly well. And he was pointing out to me the really large decline in the mussels on the Salty. The substrate does look different there, actually. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. It was quite noticeable last week when I was over there, and just the whole mussel banks are gone on the Salty, which the Salty is quite near where I took that picture, by the way, just further upstream in the estuary.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to getting back to Scylla because I keep an eye on, things settling on Scylla and changes to Scylla because we started doing that from the day that, or 2 days after it was placed on the seabed in 2004. And it's the common starfish which do for the mussels, which eat the mussels and clear them out. So keep an eye open on that, and I will try and get out to Scylla, but we just need the weather to improve. And also, Peter Tinsley tells me that he's got sort of photogrammetry images along the Lulworth banks, and he says that now on the 25th of August 2025 they were being seen on the Lulworth banks, but they had not been seen in the images in previous years. So it looks like along a great deal of the southwest Channel coast there was a significant settlement of mussels. And then something about the cross beams on Swanage Pier, mature mussel beds by the 25th of August. Might be a different story. Non-native species, there's a report published with that link, and non-native species across Britain increased by 2.8 species per site, on average in England rather, and in Wales, and that's a 29% rise. So non-native species do continue to increase, and then particular species will do particularly well in particular years. And here's another picture by Mike, Colpomelia peregrina at Livermead in Tor Bay on the 9th of October. So, I think they will have good years, they will have poor years. This is a lovely little spiral tube worm, got this lovely blue color to it, occurs in marinas. It's also recorded now from Swanage. This is a random photograph posted by Julie Lynch to say, what's this? And that's what we pick up a lot of our information from. It's random photographs posted on Facebook to say, can anyone tell me what this is? And you don't stand a chance of being able to identify Didemnum pseudovexillum because it looks just like Didemnum vexillum. But John's done all the necessary DNA stuff and so on. But that's another record. So that's the list of from John Bishop, about non-native species recorded in southwest England, but no additional species in 2025. The Asian date mussel has gone into a saline lagoon at Arn, which is an RSPB reserve, first record outside the Solent. You've done Colpomenia, Gratilupia toro at Hartland Quay, Bispira polyuma recorded at 7 sites along the Channel coast of Cornwall, Devon and Dorset. Further spread of the red ripple bryozoan, Watercypora subatra. Very difficult to see at this time of year. It's almost black. But once you get, into summertime and towards the end of summertime, it's very pretty. It looks like a red ripples ice cream. And a filamentous red alga infesting merle. I did ask if that had been identified yet before I put this presentation together. I haven't had any response, but it could well be a non-native species, and this is merle in St Austell Bay. More shores of settlement of Pacific oysters. There are reports of declining numbers of slipper limpets in southwest England, but continued increase in extent and numbers further north. Slipper limpets are a cold water species. It's not impossible that it's got a little bit too warm for them, but certainly those of you who go out on shores, keep an eye open to see whether you think you can still find slipper limpets. Very often I see change because I'm trying to boost my photographs and I go back to places where I know that species occur and go and look for them and can't find them. So that's the sort of thing which a lot of people do. New structures, biodiversity enhancement is the aim. Certainly in terms of ex-HMS Scylla, which is rather a large new structure, a whole frigate sunk to the seabed, and the number of species which have settled on Scylla, both conspicuous ones and ones which were collected by scraping away undergrowth and so on, about 260 species. And that seems like the sort of number of species you'd expect in a very detailed survey. What's happening in other artificial habitats. So most of the artificial structures, such as these being established in Padstow Harbour in November last year to create a living seawall. There's one just down the road from here, outside of Sutton Harbour in Plymouth Sound. And those are sculptured wall panels, which are much the same from place to place. So it's possible to compare settlement from different locations. And then you've got Dave Francis's sea hives in Weymouth and Portland. In this case, Weymouth and Portland Sailing Academy. It's a screenshot from a video, and they're being placed especially in marinas. So not so much activity in terms of molded structures being placed out as they were in 2024. I'd like to see some much larger designed, perhaps 3D printed structures being placed on the seabed, designed to attract a wide range of species. But at the moment, in 2025, not seeing that. Eye-catching events, storm washouts. This is a super picture by Maria Munn in Studland Bay. And Peter Tinsley also from the Dorset Wildlife Trust went to Studland Bay, and he actually documented the ones that he could identify, not necessarily a full search, but a partial search. But you can see these otter shells, and these otter shells, Lutraria, dig very deep in the sediment. I mean, I've dug for them. I had to go down 50 centimeters to get them. And here they are being washed off after a storm. There was also a lot of seagrass washed up and so on. So it happens from time to time. Peter mentions a similar washout in March 2018. So although it's pretty spectacular, this burrowing species must recover. And it's the sort of thing that needs explaining to the press that, you know, it's not likely to be pollution. It's more likely to be that storm which hit the coast and came in at an odd angle. So people are very quick to suggest pollution, but very often it's a natural event. And then sometimes it might be pollution. This is the eye-catching event, heat damaged fucoid algae on the upper shore at Burr Island in May. A lot of people wouldn't recognize those as heat damaged, but they're pretty shriveled up. And I don't know what the change was, whether they recovered. But also I do recall seeing bleached algae in rock pools. If anyone's got any photographs of bleached algae in rock pools during the summer of 2025, do send them to me, because I think they're a bit more convincing than this photograph. And it happens. It happens during very sunny periods when it's hot, and the bleaching occurs. And then I want to just keep saying finally, say getting better at comparable observations. I'm very jealous of the people who can draw graphs and histograms and so on from their sort of studies of plankton and strandings of cetaceans and things like that. Now, if you get anecdotal or descriptive observations from experienced naturalists, they should be accepted. If they're experienced naturalists, you know, you shouldn't throw them away because they haven't got statistically valid sampling protocols from people who I call statistical fascists. There's a view that some shores and subtidal locations are much less rich than, say, 10 years ago. Now, we reported this in 2024. And I talk about people who went out, for instance, to photograph things which they photographed in the past, and they want to get better photographs and they can't find them anymore, or can't find them in numbers anymore. So if you think that shores and subtidal locations that you know well are much less rich than they used to be, then please let me know. It's anecdotal, but if there are lots of those observations, we need to take notice. So many sites and specific features are visited regularly, and more repeatable methods are needed there. Now, there's lots of quadrat surveys going on, but they're for a limited number of open shore species. And I think for presence and abundance of intertidal and subtidal species, novel approaches are needed. I emphasize here that shore search includes wider searches around quadrat areas, and sea search often revisits subtidal locations. Matt, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, we're very aware, Keith, that we've got quite a lot of data now from popular dive sites through sea search, and it's something that we would really need to do a bit more detailed analysis, but a bit of a rough look at it, and we're certainly seeing a lot of the things you've been talking about, like a decline in cooler water species and arrival of more warm water species and more non-natives. But yeah, I'd love to do some sort of detailed statistical analysis, and certainly it's quite an interesting project for somebody if there was a student or someone with the skills who wanted to have a look at it.
Just a census would do. I'll talk about this in a moment, but just a census. So say, for instance, what I'm doing here is I've got the message that a lot of people say, well, that's anecdotal, Keith. You know, how do you know that it's changed? I thought, well, look, what I can do here at Marra Pool in Baton Bay in Plymouth Sound is I can actually go along this boulder shore, not at extreme low water spring tides, because you can't always guarantee getting back at extreme low water, and just turn over 20 largish boulders and catalogue what's underneath them. And that might be, 12 Montague's crabs, 10 Montague's crabs, 2 Montague's crabs, and so on. It might be that, you're seeing a few juvenile edible crabs. So in that 20 boulder walk, you might have seen 3 juvenile edible crabs. Well, that's the sort of thing which you can say, well, some people will say, well, it has to be the same boulders. Well, it's not the same boulders, but it is the sort of thing that you can actually go back and say, no, there has been a change. You know, we used to just find a total of 5 Montague's crabs, and now we're finding a total of 86 Montague's crabs or whatever. So I think that's one way of increasing your repeatability and your ability to compare. This is another one. This is somewhere I've dived quite often in the last few years. The boulder edge at about 14 meters below chart datum off south of Gull Rock on Lundy. You see the large branching sponges. They've remained much the same even since the 1980s. And you can see the sea anemones here, trumpet anemones. Yeah, they're doing very well. But there are other things which I haven't documented necessarily, which are in decline just around the corner at the knoll pins. So going back to the same place, doing abundance of conspicuous species surveys can be repeated. This is a different topic altogether. This is one particular species. How's it doing? And this is when I went on the shore with Steve Hawkins at Cellar Beach. I occasionally get a phone call from Steve Hawkins saying, what are you doing, Keith? Do you want to come out on the shore? And I know that his wife's told him that he can't go on the shore by himself. He needs someone with him. So he sends me off looking for things, but he was doing his standard 3-minute search of hermit crabs. And he got 14 Clibinarius, the St. Piran's crabs, and 4 Eupaguirus, the usual common hermit crabs. So you can do that sort of thing as well in a systematic way from the same area. So just, you know, have a think how you can make your observations more comparable. And here's one which I think folks at Wembury, if you're there, Jake, folks at Wembury should do, because this is a north-facing, very shaded, long rock face, which has a lot of unusual species on it, species which are really subtidal. And I just listed a few of them here. I mean, I've got reasonably complete lists myself to go back and see whether you can get the same list of species. And if you look at the Plymouth marine fauna, they won't say precisely this overhanging north-facing rock, but they will, you know, I think that's where they were sampling the old boys. And I think you can go back to Plymouth Marine Fauna, published in 1957, but with records going back to the 1900s. And you can see whether you can still find these species. And when you're there, you'll probably add other species which are not on your existing lists. So I think you can be more systematic in terms of going back to locations like this, especially as people like me get more and more decrepit and we can't go back without danger of needing a helicopter to get me out. And again, I mentioned this in a previous presentation, but I'm going to mention it again for those people who go diving on the offshore reefs in particular. I am seeing many less 7-armed starfish, that's intertidally, so they also occur intertidally. You never saw many Perennial pulvillus, the cushion star, which is it's a warm water species, any being seen now at places like Hat Rock. And then Bloody Henry starfish, again, are you seeing less? So questions there. One of the fantastic things when you're a diver is doing your decompression stop at about 3 to 5 meters in October and September. And you are surrounded by these tiny little starfish in the plankton with their gelatinous sheath, and they're just streaming past you. And it's just a fabulous sight. And I haven't seen it for several years. It might be because I'm not getting out enough diving. If you've seen them in recent years, do let me know. If the answer is, oh, I haven't seen those for years, do let me know. So, you know, you get observations which do suggest decline, and then hopefully some of those will come back. And then my final topic is how we're using this information to inform environmental protection and management, conservation. So we're boosting the knowledge that we have of change, and especially of likely fluctuations in populations. So when somebody says, oh, it's a disaster, you know, all of the otter shells have been washed up in heaps, you can turn around and say, yeah, that happened in 2008, happened in 2025, and, you know, it'll happen again. Documenting worrisome declines in abundance and diversity of species. So this is where you can't work out what's going on. But you still need to document it. Documenting rates of recovery after events. I mentioned the fucoid algae, which were affected by the sunshine and desiccated. And how long will that take to recover? It's the same with things like oil spills. How long does it take to recover after, you know, the oil spill's been cleaned up? Then we need to link seashore and seabed events with changes in what I call the Southwest marine ecosystem silos. The silos are the people who deal with plankton and have their own meetings, and such like the people who deal with oceanography and have their own meetings, the people who deal with cetaceans and have their whole own meetings. No, we need to see if there are links. And we all want to inform updates of, and I should have written in here, updates of the touchstones which are used in environmental protection and management. So those touchstones are things like lists of rare and scarce species. And I will say this with people from the nature conservation agencies present, it is absolutely remarkable still that the list of rare and scarce species is Bill Sanderson's 1996 list. That is what you are using together with red list criteria to produce your lists of important species or species which need to be protected. You're living in an world of ignorance, and it really needs to be sorted out, but I'm not in a position to do so, and I probably now made myself very unpopular. So anything else you can think of that what we do with looking at marine life on the seabed and seashore can inform environmental protection and management? Anyone want to put their hand up or just shout out? Let me know, because you've probably had enough by now. So you've had enough, and that's the end of this webinar. You've got my email address there if you want to follow up with some afterthoughts or some comments or things that I've missed out. So has anyone got any comments? Just shout out, because I'm not seeing your hand up. Yes, who's that? Is that Karen? Karen, yes.
That's Karen, yeah. Going back to your spiny lobsters, I just found something. It looks like it's Google AI, but it looks like it's coming from Crawfish Research Program, Anglesey Sea Zoo. And it says, European spiny lobsters in the UK often form groups in nooks and crevices using collective defensive and armoured behaviours to protect against predators. So what you're saying, yes.
Yeah, well, I haven't come across that, so you can let me have the reference.
I will send you also, it said something in the Caribbean, they do the same. This is another site. So I should send you the link.
Yeah, send me the link, because yes, I obviously haven't had a novel thought, but no, I think that we'll keep an eye on the spiny lobsters, and the fact that the ones we're seeing in aggregations are actually quite small ones, not big ones. Anyone else got anything they want to add?
Hi, Keith. I was just going to say, I wondered with the spiny lobster aggregations, it probably is a defense thing, like you said, but maybe it's not just the octopus. There's been reports of very high numbers of conger eels in the last year or so as well. So it could also, you know, it could be both. They could be defending themselves against.
Well, that's a good one, because indeed, I've looked at the beginnings of the fish webinar for next week, and it does specifically mention the enormous increase in the number of conger eels. Now, have you got any evidence, Matt, of conger eels eating spiny lobsters?
No, not yet. I haven't seen any, but I mean, they go for crabs and European lobsters, so it's possible.
Well, that's a good point, though. Not just octopus.
Yeah.
Matt, was it you that took the picture of a cuttlefish with the antennae of a crawfish sticking out?
No, that was springing to my mind as well. That's Mike Markey who took that
Oh, that
one.
was Mike Markey who took
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cuttlefish will go for small spiny lobsters if they can catch them from behind.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else got any points they want to make? No?
Yes,
you've all...
Keith, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Doug, yeah.
Your report of Aplysia depillans.
Yeah.
Back in August to November 2007, we were getting a lot of very big Aplysias. And most of the ones I came across were considered to be fasciata, and only a few of them dipillans. I wonder if they had been considered. Are they actually dipillans? I found fasciata more common back in 2007.
Is fasciatum the one which has got a sort of slightly purpley edge to it?
It was more a question of the folds on the back.
Yeah.
And also penis. I did send mine up to the Natural History Museum, so.
Okay, well, we ought to take account of that, but it's almost the sort of thing be careful what you call something.
Yes.
Don't just jump to the first conclusion.
For us, we found some at Mountbatten, and we had those confirmed as depilans.
Yeah.
And mine and Alderney.
Did you? Sorry.
Also, mine and Alderney also depilans as well, so it's confirmed.
Right.
Good, because I don't want to get any mistakes into the annual report. But I might come back to you, Doug, and ask you for more, sort of chapter and verse, as it were, because, it's a caution for people not just assume immediately, especially if they are back again this coming summer. Anyone else want to shout out?
Keith, I agree with you that the 7-armed starfish, they're just not being picked up anymore by sea search observers. Very, 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 very in decline, I think, that species. And it's tricky, isn't it? I would like to know if anyone's got a spot where they always used to see large amounts of brittle stars. I think there's less, but I don't have a spot where I used to always sort of reliably see them, and I'd be interested if anyone's picked up on that as well. So no, 7-armed starfish eat them, don't they?
They do, yes. I mean, there are very big beds off the southeast side of Lundy, but I no longer have command of vessels. So I can't just say, let's go and have a look at the brittle star beds off the southeast coast of Lundy. But I think a sea search trip to Berry Head, not your region, but Berry Head would be useful, because that's where the classic brittle star studies published in the 1970s were done. So yes,
that sounds good. Head. Yeah, interested in looking into that. Thanks.
But I can't think of that many places, and I'd love to get more pictures of the brittle star beds. Anything else that people can think of? No. Do you know, we've done very well with time, because I said 2 o'clock to 3:30, and it's 3:26. So I'm now going to sort of invite you to email me if you've got any further observations. And then I'm going to shut down. But thank you very much indeed, everyone, for contributing to this event. And I do hope you found it interesting, and that you'll come to the annual conference, where, as I say, it'll be a very different event to usual. It'll be an opportunity to try and work out just what's going on out there and what's influencing our marine life of all sorts, but including obviously also the oceanography the meteorology and so on. So do keep in touch and do let me have your records, and have a good season of observations. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers,
Thank
Keith.
you. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, Keith.
Okay.